The great halls of the Galactic Council buzzed with unusual activity. The massive crystal dome above cast rainbow patterns across the worried faces of 100 different species. At the center of the chamber, Earth's ambassador Tom Wilson stood calmly, his gray suit a plain contrast to the colorful and elaborate outfits of other species around him. "You must understand, Ambassador Wilson," spoke High Counselor Gray, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "These creatures have destroyed entire civilizations. The shadow beasts are approaching your colonial systems, and we strongly advise immediate evacuation." Tom kept his hands folded behind his back, a habit from his military days. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a terrifying creature, 3 meters tall, covered in pitch-black scales that seemed to absorb light itself. Its 6 limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and its elongated head featured rows of sensor pits that glowed with an eerie blue light. "With all due respect, High Counselor," Tom replied, "humanity has faced challenges before. We would appreciate more information about these shadow beasts before making any decisions." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. A reptilian delegate slammed his tail against the floor for attention. "Information. They killed half my species 3 centuries ago. They hunt using neural disruption. They freeze your mind, make you see things that aren't there, and then they tear you apart." Tom watched the hologram rotate, studying the creature's anatomy. "And no one has ever tried to communicate with them." "Communicate?" A bird-like creature laughed, her feathers ruffling. "Ambassador, you don't understand. These aren't some misunderstood beings. They're apex predators. They don't want to talk. They want to hunt." Back on Earth, the Emergency Response Center was already buzzing with activity. Director Kate Brown stared at the same holographic data, surrounded by Earth's best scientists and military leaders. The room was filled with the soft hum of computers and quiet discussions. "The Council has shared records of 17 species who tried to fight the shadow beasts," Kate announced, her voice steady. "All of them failed, but notice something interesting. They all tried to fight. No one tried anything else." Dr. James Parker, head of xenobiology, raised his hand. "Director, these neural disruption abilities. They're fascinating. Why would a simple predator evolve such a complex ability just to hunt? It doesn't make sense from a biological standpoint." In the council chambers, Tom was thinking along the same lines. He stepped closer to the hologram, ignoring the gasps from some delegates. "High Counselor, our colonies have early warning systems. We have defenses, but I would like to request all available data on past encounters. Maybe we'll see something others missed." The High Counselor waved 2 of his arms in frustration. "Ambassador, you have 2 weeks before the first Shadow Beast pack reaches your outer colony on New Haven. Even if you start evacuating now, you'll barely get everyone out in time." Tom smiled slightly. "Then we better get to work. Humanity thanks the Council for their warning, but we'll handle this our way." As he walked out of the chamber, Tom could hear the whispers. Some called humans brave, others called them foolish, but none of them knew humanity's secret weapon, curiosity. While other species ran from what they feared, humans had a habit of trying to understand it. In the following days, ships departed Earth carrying not weapons, but scientists, linguists, and researchers. Special equipment designed to study neural patterns was rushed to New Haven Colony. While the Council expected humans to fortify or run, humanity prepared to do what it did best: reach out and try to understand. The clock was ticking. 2 weeks until first contact. 2 weeks to prepare for either humanity's greatest discovery or its greatest disaster. But as Tom looked at the latest reports from Earth, he felt a strange excitement. After all, humanity had never met a creature it couldn't eventually befriend. From wolves to dolphins to alien species. Maybe, just maybe, the shadow beasts would be next. The mining colony of New Haven wasn't much to look at. Metal buildings dotted the rocky landscape under a purple sky, connected by covered walkways to protect against the harsh winds. In Mining Control Tower 7, Jack Miller was finishing his night shift, doing what kept him sane during the long hours, playing classical music through the station's external speakers. The colony used these speakers to warn workers about storms, but Jack had discovered they worked just fine for Beethoven's Symphony No. 9. His supervisor didn't mind. Sound didn't travel far in the thin atmosphere anyway. That's when the first sensor alerts started blinking. Movement detected in Sector 12, the computer announced. Jack sat up straight, checking the screens. The motion sensors were picking up something big. Multiple somethings. Following protocol, he hit the emergency button. Red lights started flashing throughout the colony, but Jack kept his eyes on the external cameras. Then he saw them, exactly like the warnings had shown. 3 massive shapes moving through the darkness, their black scales making them look like moving shadows. Shadow beasts. They had arrived early. The evacuation sirens began to wail, mixing with the final notes of Beethoven's symphony. But something was wrong. Or rather, something wasn't wrong. The shadow beasts weren't attacking. They had stopped moving. Jack watched in amazement as one of the creatures tilted its head, seeming to listen. When the music ended, the beast made a sound, a deep rumbling noise that the external microphones barely picked up. Without thinking, Jack started the symphony again. His hands were shaking as he reached for the communication panel. "Control, this is Tower 7. You need to see this." Within minutes, the emergency response team was watching through Jack's cameras. The shadow beasts had settled into what looked almost like sitting positions, their glowing sensor pits pulsing in time with the music. "They're listening to Beethoven." Dr. Anna Thompson's voice came through Jack's headset. She had arrived with the research team last week. "Jack, try something else. Different music." Jack switched to Mozart's Ein kleine Nacht music. The creatures moved again, but not to attack. They swayed gently, their neural sensors glowing brighter. "Keep playing," Dr. Thompson ordered. "I'm coming up. And someone get me a neural pattern scanner." The next few hours made history, though Jack didn't know it at the time. He played through his entire classical playlist while Dr. Thompson recorded the shadow beast's neural emissions. The creatures never moved to attack. Instead, they began producing their own sounds, complex patterns of rumbles and clicks that seemed to follow the music's rhythm. "This is incredible," Dr. Thompson whispered, staring at her readings. "These neural patterns, they're not weapons, they're language, the most complex language I've ever seen. And look, they're trying to match the musical patterns. They're trying to communicate." By morning, New Haven had become the site of humanity's greatest first contact success. The 3 shadow beasts remained near Tower 7, occasionally producing their own musical-like sounds. More importantly, no one had died, and nothing had been destroyed. When Jack's replacement arrived, Dr. Thompson wouldn't let him leave. "You're the one they first responded to," she explained. "We need you here. Besides, look at them. They seem to like your taste in music." The largest shadow beast had moved closer to the tower, its massive head level with the observation window. Its neural sensors pulsed with soft blue light, and for a moment, Jack felt something. A gentle touch in his mind, like a question mark made of music. "They're not predators," Jack said slowly. "At least, that's not all they are. They're artists." Dr. Thompson was already sending her findings to Earth. The Galactic Council had been wrong. The most feared creatures in the galaxy hadn't come to hunt. They had come looking for someone who could finally hear their song. As the sun rose over New Haven, Jack started another symphony. This time, when the shadow beasts joined in with their rumbling harmonies, he could have sworn they were trying to sing along. 3 weeks after first contact, the research base at New Haven had transformed. The simple mining colony now hosted the largest collection of musicians and scientists ever assembled off Earth. In the main research dome, Dr. Anna Thompson stood before a wall of data screens, explaining her findings to a captivated audience. "We've been looking at this all wrong," she said, pointing to a complex pattern of neural waves. Every species that encountered shadow beasts thought these signals were attacks. But look what happens when we overlay them with musical patterns. The display changed, showing two waves moving in perfect harmony, one from a shadow beast, one from a classical symphony. The gathered scientists leaned forward, their eyes wide. "They're not trying to hurt us," Dr. Thompson continued. "They're trying to sing to us. Their entire language is based on complex harmonies that most species interpret as neural interference. But human brains," she smiled, "our brains are uniquely suited to recognize musical patterns." In the observation area next door, the proof of her theory was clear. 3 shadow beasts, now named Harmony, Melody, and Rhythm by the research team, moved in synchronized patterns while a string quartet played. Their neural sensors pulsed with soft blue light, creating beautiful patterns in the air. Jack Miller, the mining engineer who made first contact, sat with them daily. He had discovered that the creatures could learn human music with incredible speed. More surprisingly, humans could learn to understand their neural songs. "It's like learning a new language," Jack explained to a group of visiting officials. "But instead of words, you feel the meaning. The neural patterns they create are actually stories, memories, and ideas." As if to demonstrate, Harmony, the largest shadow beast, turned its massive head toward Jack and released a gentle wave of neural energy. The humans in the room felt a series of images and emotions: stars, distant worlds, a sense of searching, loneliness, and finally, joy at finding someone who could understand. Dr. Thompson's team had made another crucial discovery. The shadow beast's hunting behavior, which had terrified the galaxy for centuries, was actually a defensive response. When faced with weapons or hostility, their neural communications became distorted by fear and anger, creating the devastating effects that had given them their fearsome reputation. "They're empaths," Dr. Thompson explained. "They feel what others feel. When species attack them out of fear, that fear and hostility reflected back magnified. It became a cycle. Fear leading to attack, attack leading to defense, defense being seen as aggression." The research center's latest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lisa, a young music therapist, had been working with the shadow beasts using different types of music. She discovered that they could learn to control their neural outputs by matching them to specific musical scales. "It's like they needed a reference point," Lisa explained while playing a soft melody on her piano. "Music gives them a framework to moderate their emotional projections. They're not just communicating now, they're learning to translate." The implications were enormous. If shadow beasts could learn to control their neural outputs through music, they could potentially interact safely with any species. Centuries of conflict could end with a symphony. In the evening, as the research team prepared their report for Earth and the Galactic Council, something unprecedented happened. Harmony approached the main window of the observation room and began to produce a neural pattern unlike anything they'd recorded before. The humans present felt not just images or emotions, but a complete story. They saw the shadow beast's history, a peaceful species of artists and explorers, transformed by countless attacks into feared predators. They felt centuries of loneliness, of trying to reach out only to be met with weapons and fear. "They've been looking for us," Jack whispered, understanding flowing through him with the music. "All this time, they'd been searching the galaxy for someone who could hear their songs." As the sun set over New Haven, human music and shadow beast harmonies merged into something new. The fear that had divided species for centuries was being replaced by understanding, one note at a time. The deadliest predators in the galaxy were finally being seen for what they truly were: artists looking for an audience that could understand their songs. Commander David Roberts had seen many strange things during his 20 years in space, but nothing quite like this. He stood in New Haven's newly constructed Symphony Hall, watching as humans and shadow beasts prepared for the first official communication ceremony. The hall was a marvel of engineering, designed specifically to enhance both musical and neural transmissions. Curved walls made of special sound-reflecting materials rose up to a transparent dome, under which the purple sky of New Haven cast a twilight glow. "Are you ready, Commander?" Dr. Thompson asked, helping him adjust the neural receiver on his temple. The small device, developed over the past month, would help translate the Shadow Beast's neural songs into something human brains could more easily process. "As ready as I'll ever be," David replied, trying to hide his nervousness. Today they would attempt something unprecedented, a formal diplomatic exchange with beings that the rest of the galaxy still considered monsters. The Shadow Beast delegation had grown. Besides the original 3, 12 more had arrived over the past weeks, drawn by the neural songs of their companions. Their leader, whom they now called Maestro, stood nearly 4 meters tall, larger than any they had seen before. The ceremony began with music. The London Symphony Orchestra, which had traveled specifically for this event, began playing a piece specially composed for this occasion. It combined Earth's classical traditions with patterns matching the Shadow Beast's neural frequencies. As the music filled the hall, Maestro stepped forward. The massive creature's neural sensors began to pulse, not with the threatening red glow that had terrified other species, but with a calm blue light that synchronized with the orchestra's rhythm. David felt the first touch of neural communication. Thanks to weeks of practice and the new translation device, he could understand the complex layers of meaning. Maestro was sharing the story of their species. Images and emotions flowed through his mind. A peaceful civilization of beings who experienced life through shared neural songs. Their first disastrous contact with other species. Centuries of misunderstanding and conflict. The long search for someone who could understand their true nature. Then it was David's turn. He focused his thoughts, using the musical backdrop as a guide, just as they had practiced. Through the neural transmitter, he shared humanity's story. Their struggles, their growth, their constant desire to understand and connect with other beings. The orchestra shifted to a new movement, and something magical happened. The Shadow Beasts began adding their own neural harmonies to the music. The human musicians, wearing neural receivers, picked up these patterns and adapted their playing. The result was something entirely new, a true blend of both species' forms of expression. In the audience, scientists and diplomats from Earth watched in amazement as layers of music and neural songs filled the hall. Some reported seeing colors in the air. Others felt emotions they couldn't name. The Shadow Beasts swayed in perfect synchronization with the orchestra, their neural patterns creating visible waves of blue light that danced with the music. "It's working," Dr. Thompson whispered, checking her instruments. "The neural patterns are stable. Both species are maintaining clear communication without any sign of distress or misunderstanding." The ceremony reached its climax as Maestro and David performed the first official diplomatic exchange. Through a combination of music and neural transmission, they established the basic framework for future cooperation between their species. The Shadow Beasts shared their advanced understanding of neural science and cosmic navigation. In return, humans offered their music, art, and a chance to finally be understood. More importantly, they offered to help the Shadow Beasts make peace with other species. As the last notes faded, David felt a final neural transmission from Maestro. It wasn't just words or images, but a profound sense of hope. After millennia of being feared, the Shadow Beasts had found not just friends, but translators who could help them bridge the gap with the rest of the galaxy. The ceremony ended with thunderous applause from the humans, and a harmonious neural chorus from the Shadow Beasts. In that moment, in a concert hall on a distant mining colony, the future of galactic civilization shifted on its axis. The most feared predators in known space had finally found their voice, and humanity had helped them sing. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so crowded. Representatives from over 300 species packed the chamber, their voices creating a storm of whispers and shouts. Today, humanity would present their Shadow Beast diplomatic mission to the Council. Ambassador Tom Wilson stood calmly at the center of the chamber, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him towered Maestro, the Shadow Beast leader, its neural sensors glowing with a gentle blue light. The sight caused many council members to reach for their weapons before remembering they weren't allowed in the chamber. "Order. We will have order." High Counselor Gray's voice boomed across the hall. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, showing his own nervousness. "Ambassador Wilson, you realize bringing that being here breaks every safety protocol we have." "With respect, High Counselor," Tom replied, "that's exactly why we're here. Everything you think you know about the shadow beasts is wrong." A reptilian delegate stood up, his scales bristling with anger. "Wrong. They killed millions of my people. We all saw the neural attacks, the hunting, the destruction." Maestro's neural sensors pulsed slightly, and several council members flinched. But instead of pain or fear, they felt something different, a wave of deep sorrow and regret. Dr. Thompson stepped forward, carrying her neural translation device. "What you felt just now was an apology," she explained. "The shadow beasts have been trying to communicate with other species for centuries. Their neural patterns were never meant to be weapons." To demonstrate, she activated a holographic display showing parallel waves of musical notes and neural patterns. "Their entire language is based on harmonic frequencies. What you interpreted as attacks were attempts at communication, distorted by fear and misunderstanding on both sides." The chamber erupted again, but this time in confused discussion. A bird-like delegate fluttered her wings anxiously. "But the hunting, the attacks on our colonies." Tom nodded to Jack Miller, who had been invited to speak about first contact. Jack stepped forward, looking surprisingly comfortable next to the towering maestro. "Think about it," Jack said. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could have. Instead, when they heard our music, they stopped. They listened. They tried to understand us, just as they have been trying to understand every species they met." To prove their point, Maestro began to project neural patterns while a small human orchestra played from a corner of the chamber. The combined effect was beautiful, waves of color and emotion that matched the music perfectly. Council members watched in amazement as the most feared creature in the galaxy essentially performed a concert. "This is their true nature," Dr. Thompson explained. "They're artists, explorers, and philosophers. Their neural abilities evolved to share knowledge and emotions, not to harm. But when attacked, their defensive responses became devastating weapons." The chamber grew quiet as Maestro shared images of their history. Peaceful first contact attempts met with violence, desperate self-defense interpreted as aggression, centuries of loneliness and misunderstanding. "Humanity didn't succeed because we're braver or stronger," Tom said into the silence. "We succeeded because we listened. Instead of reaching for weapons, we reached for understanding." A younger council member stood up. "But how can we trust them? After everything that's happened?" "The same way they're trusting us now," Tom replied. "Maestro is standing in the heart of what was once enemy territory, surrounded by species that have tried to destroy its kind, offering peace." The council session lasted for hours. Questions were asked, fears were addressed, and slowly, understanding began to grow. The humans demonstrated their neural translation devices, allowing council members to experience the shadow beast's true communication for themselves. By the end of the day, the council chamber had witnessed something unprecedented. Representatives of various species cautiously approaching Maestro, experiencing its neural songs without fear for the first time. As the session closed, High Counselor Gray made an historic announcement. "The Council will establish a joint human-shadow beast communication task force. Perhaps it's time we all learn to listen differently." Outside the chamber, Tom watched as council members gathered around the human musicians, asking questions about music and neural patterns. Maestro's peaceful presence had shaken centuries of fear and hatred. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a start. The most feared predators in the galaxy were finally being heard, and humanity had helped them find their voice. In the vast archives beneath the Galactic Council building, Dr. Thompson and a team of historians made a discovery that would change everything. They had spent weeks digging through ancient records, trying to understand the true history of the shadow beasts. "Look at this," she said, projecting a hologram of an ancient star chart. Around her, both human researchers and three smaller shadow beasts studied the display. These are the original migration patterns of the shadow beasts from over 10,000 years ago. The paths shown on the map weren't random or hunting related. They formed perfect spirals, following mathematical patterns that matched musical harmonies. It was art on a galactic scale. "They weren't hunting grounds," Jack Miller said, understanding dawning on his face. "They were concert halls. The shadow beasts were creating music using entire star systems." The next discovery came from deep in the oldest section of the archives. Records from the first spacefaring civilizations showed that the shadow beasts had once been known as the Star Singers. They had traveled the galaxy sharing knowledge through their neural songs, teaching younger species about art and science. "So what changed?" Tom Wilson asked, studying the ancient texts. "How did teachers become feared as predators?" A soft neural pulse from one of the shadow beasts provided the answer. Dr. Thompson translated the images: fear, misunderstanding, and a tragic series of events that began with one panicked species attacking what they didn't understand. "It was a cascade effect," she explained. "One species attacked out of fear. The shadow beasts defended themselves, their neural distress signals interpreted as weapons. News spread, more species attacked, and the shadow beasts' defensive responses became stronger. They literally became what everyone feared they were." The evidence was overwhelming. In the archive's deepest vault, they found recordings from the time before the conflicts began. The neural patterns in these ancient records were identical to the peaceful songs the shadow beasts now shared with humans. When this information was presented to the council, the effect was immediate. Many species began searching their own historical records, finding forgotten stories of peaceful encounters with the Star Singers before the wars began. An elderly delegate from one of the oldest species stood up during the presentation. "I remember stories my grandmother told me," he said, his voice shaking, "about beings who sang with their minds and painted with starlight. We thought they were just legends." The shadow beasts present in the chamber responded with a neural chorus that brought tears to many eyes. Through the translation devices, everyone felt the same message: hope, forgiveness, and a desire to restore what was lost. Dr. Thompson's team made another crucial discovery. The shadow beast's neural abilities had evolved not for hunting or defense, but for sharing emotions and memories across generations. Their entire society was built on the idea of preserving and sharing experiences through neural songs. "They're living libraries," she explained to the council. "Each shadow beast carries the memories and knowledge of their entire species. When we treated them as monsters, we weren't just attacking individuals. We were attacking the greatest collection of cultural knowledge in the galaxy." The truth about the shadow beasts spread quickly across the galaxy. Species that had once fled at the mention of their name now sent representatives to learn about their true nature. The neural translation devices developed by humans became critical tools for healing ancient wounds. In a formal ceremony, the council officially renamed them the Star Singers, restoring their ancient title. Maestro, representing all shadow beasts, shared a neural song that told their complete history, from their peaceful beginnings through the dark times of fear and conflict, to the new hope brought by human understanding. "We didn't just find new allies," Tom Wilson told the council. "We rediscovered teachers who have been waiting millennia to share their knowledge." The greatest tragedy in galactic history wasn't their aggression. It was our fear that prevented us from hearing their songs. As the day ended, the archives were open to all species. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows of fear, and with it came the promise of a new era of understanding. The most feared predators in known space were returning to their true role as artists, teachers, and keepers of the galaxy's oldest songs. 1 year after the truth about the shadow beasts emerged, The first joint human star singer colony celebrated its opening on a beautiful world they named Harmony. Under twin purple suns, a vast city rose from the plains, its architecture unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. The buildings themselves were musical instruments. Designed by human architects and star singer artists, they captured wind and light, turning them into endless symphonies. Neural resonators built into the structures allowed the star singers to add their songs to the city's constant music. Jack Miller stood on the main observation deck, watching as transport ships arrived from across the galaxy. "Hard to believe this all started with a night shift and some Beethoven," he said to Dr. Thompson, who was checking the latest neural frequency readings. "Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices," she replied. "Look there, another group of students arriving." The education center had become the heart of Harmony City. Species that once fled from the star singers now sent their brightest minds to learn from them. The neural translation technology had advanced so much that even species without natural musical ability could experience the star singer songs. Commander Roberts, now governor of Harmony, welcomed a delegation of young learners from 20 different worlds. "Welcome to the first Neural Arts Academy," he announced, standing beside Maestro. "Here, you'll learn not just the star singer songs, but a new way of sharing knowledge across all species." The Academy's first breakthrough came from a young student who discovered that the star singers' neural patterns could aid in healing mental trauma. Their songs, properly translated, helped rebuild neural pathways and soothe psychological wounds. They weren't just artists, the student explained during her presentation. They were the galaxy's first therapists. Their neural songs evolved to help other species process emotions and heal from trauma. "We misunderstood their greatest gift as a weapon." In the center of the city stood the Galactic Symphony Hall, a structure that dwarfed even the council chambers. Here, musicians and star singers performed together daily, creating new forms of art that combined physical music with neural harmonies. The performances were broadcast across the galaxy, changing hearts and minds with every note. Tom Wilson, watching one such performance, received an urgent message from Earth. The genetic research team had made an unexpected discovery. Human DNA showed signs of ancient modification, changes that made human brains uniquely capable of processing musical patterns and neural songs. "We think the star singers visited Earth thousands of years ago," the lead researcher explained. "They left their mark in our genes, preparing humanity for this moment. We weren't just lucky to understand them, we were designed to be their future partners." This news spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species began discovering similar markers in their own genetic codes. The star singers had planted seeds of understanding throughout the galaxy, waiting patiently for species to evolve enough to understand their songs. At a special gathering in Harmony City, Maestro shared a neural song that left everyone stunned. It was a vision of the future. Thousands of worlds connected not by politics or trade, but by art and shared experiences. The star singers had always known this day would come. They had endured centuries of fear and isolation, protecting their knowledge until they found species ready to help them share it. "This isn't just about music or neural patterns," Dr. Thompson told a group of new students. "It's about understanding that there are many ways to communicate, to think, to exist." Humanity's gift wasn't just hearing their songs, it was teaching others how to listen. As the twin suns set over Harmony, the city's music rose to greet the stars. Human voices joined with star singer neural songs, creating patterns of sound and light that danced in the darkening sky. Ships arriving from distant worlds could see the display from orbit, a beacon of hope in a galaxy learning to sing together. The beings once feared as the deadliest predators had become the galaxy's greatest teachers, and humanity had helped write the first notes of this new symphony. As Jack Miller often said, sometimes the most beautiful songs come from those who were once feared to be monsters.